Enigma renderings, where stories whisper through shadows.
Greetings, listeners of the unknown, and welcome back to Enigma renderings, where stories whisper through shadows. For those learning English, let this be your companion, where language immerses you through sound, tension, and silence. You're listening to Enigma renderings, your home for cinematic storytelling in English. Our journey began with a single idea: to carry powerful stories beyond the borders of language. Stories born in Bengal, in Tamil, in Hindi, and across many cultures, translated into English without losing their soul. Because stories are not bound to words alone, they travel, they transform, but their essence endures. Tonight we return to India, to Bengal, to the quiet depths of its literary horror. A story not driven by monsters or blood, but by something far more disturbing. A sound, a presence, a laughter that should not exist. Tonight's tale is The Laughter, a translated work inspired by the writing of Bibhutibhushan Bandyopadhyay, where fear rises not from what is seen, but from what is heard in the deep silence of night. So dim the lights, slow your thoughts, let the world outside fade. Sit back, wear your headphones, and listen closely as we step into the shadows and follow the echo of the laughter.
There was no one else anywhere, inside or outside the station waiting room. Even the bearer could not be found, no matter how loudly we called. Left with no option, we gave up all hope of tea and, pulling our rugs tightly around us, the few of us stretched out on the easy chairs. It was the end of February, yet the cold was sharper than even the month of December in Bengal.
Listen, do whatever you like, but I won't survive the night without tea. You sit. Let me see if I can arrange something.
The moment the door opened, a blade-like gust of icy western wind shot into the room, and we all gasped aloud. Raman was already gone. As I moved to shut the open door, I looked outside. The fog was thick, oppressively so. Prithwish was the philosopher of our group. Until now, he had been lying completely covered with his rug. Suddenly, he lifted his head and said,
"Look, I'm having a very uncanny sensation."
I said, "What kind of uncanny? Ghosts and all that?" He threw off his rug and sat up in the easy chair. After looking around carefully, he said,
"I don't know exactly, but something feels wrong."
By then, all of us had sat upright again. Salil said,
"That's not strange at all. I know of something. In a station waiting room like this, people weren't allowed to stay after 10 at night. Still, once a gentleman got down from a very late train and stayed the night in the waiting room. In the morning, when he didn't wake up, people tried to rouse him and found him lying face down, unconscious. After a great deal of effort, he came to. He told everyone that towards the end of the night, an Englishman came and woke him. Suddenly, the man took a razor out of his pocket and pressed it to his own throat, dragging it back and forth so violently that the horrible scraping sound of blade against flesh made his entire body shudder. The gentleman screamed to call for help, but found no one anywhere. The Englishman had vanished too. After that, he remembered nothing. In the bathroom of that very station's waiting room, a young English engineer had once killed himself in exactly that manner. Since then, this sort of thing.
All of us turned to look toward our own bathroom. Beyond the waiting room lay the deserted hill country of the loop line. Jungles on one side, and across the tracks only the station master's quarters and the gatekeeper's hut at the level crossing. Just beyond the station platform stood a tiny shop selling betel, cigarettes and tea. We had seen it open during the day, even into the evening, but after that the shopkeeper had vanished, closing it and leaving. Before the story could fully take hold, the door suddenly opened. Raman entered, accompanied by a porter carrying a brass tray loaded with 7 or 8 cups of tea. The moment he came in, Raman said,
See, where there is a will, there is a way. Didn't I tell you I'd manage tea? I met the station master. Turns out he's from our district. He said, Of course, Bengali gentleman, serving tea would be my good fortune. He wouldn't hear of refusing. Sent it freshly made from his own house.
Before Raman could finish, a gentleman pushed the door open and stepped inside. Raman sprang up like a toy and exclaimed,
Here he is, Mitter Mushai. Come in, come in. This is Haridas Babu, the station master here. Please sit.
By then, Haridas Babu had seated himself beside the table. Perched like a great bird on the armless cane chair, raising his hand in greeting. Haridas Babu was not under 45. Broad-built, with greying hair of the temples, clean-shaven, nourished by the wheat and water of the western provinces, robust and solid. I asked, How long have you been posted here, Haridas Babu?
This coming February will make it a year and a half. It's quite hard, you know. Fish is almost impossible to get, and you hardly ever see a Bengali face. That's why I was so happy to hear you'd arrived. When he mentioned tea, I thought, well, my house is nearby, so why not? How far are you gentlemen traveling?
We've set out to cycle to Delhi. We're coming from the other side. We plan to cross the river here, go via Bhagalpur, and then join the Grand Trunk Road. What time can we get the Bhagalpur transport here tomorrow morning? After much conversation, our answers to his curious questions about the journey and the exchange of various necessary bits of railway news, the flow of talk gradually slowed. No one felt sleepy. Especially after the hot tea, all traces of drowsiness had vanished. Our bodies felt strangely alert. To rekindle the dying flame of conversation, I suddenly said, So tell me, sir, there aren't any ghosts in your waiting room bathroom, are there? At once, Salil's story of that unknown station's bathroom and the young engineer returned to our minds. We laughed again, and some of us pretended to harbor similar fears about this station's bathroom as well.
All utter nonsense.
Haridas Babu had been silent for some time. As he tapped the ash from the 4th cigarette we had offered him, he yawned and straightened up.
You may laugh, but listen. I will tell you something from my own life. A personal experience.
After lighting his 5th cigarette, he told us his strange story.
This happened a long time ago. I was not very old then, no less than 12 or 13. My uncle worked in the forest department, and at that time he was posted at the Khulna Moralganj outpost. For some reason I can no longer clearly recall, I went with my family to visit him. At that time, my uncle was living in Khulna town. We stayed there for many days. Since there was talk of a long stay, I was admitted to a local school. We had gone to Khulna just after the puja that year. After studying for a few months, the summer vacation came, more than a month long. I begged my uncle to take me with him to his place of work at Moralganj. He agreed and took me along. That season was the time for renewing licenses for honey and wax collectors. To prevent people from illegally entering the forest using old licenses, forest department boats and steam launches constantly patrolled the rivers, creeks, and canals of the Sundarbans. Many times I accompanied my uncle on these official boats into the forest. Even today, I carry within me a dreamlike image of the Sundarbans. I was just a child then, barely 13, fresh from the city. The wild, untouched beauty of the forest, day after day for that entire month, brought such joy to my eager young mind that I cannot fully express it in words. I never went back there again. Though it has been many years, even now, from time to time, images of the Sundarbans, especially under moonlight, return to me. The sloping banks of narrow canals thick with jungle soil, rows of gab trees and wild gold trees with fresh leaves, the sound of the tide at the mouth of a creek. And even at this age, remembering one particular thing makes my heart ache. Strangely, I remember that day clearly. That part of the Sundarbans was being surveyed then. A large launch was anchored in the middle of a wide river. That afternoon, we were invited onto that launch. 4 or 5 of us, including myself, a Kanungo, a clerk, all Bengalis. 7 or 8 people in total. The meal was elaborate. Afterwards, there was some singing as well. When evening fell, we took our leave and boarded our barge. Gradually, night came. The moon rose. The newly leafed forest on both sides of the canal shimmered in the moonlight. From far away came the strange cries of nocturnal birds. After the tide turned, the sloping branches of submerged gold trees slowly began to emerge from the water. Because of the danger of tigers, our barge always carried 2 armed constables. They set up cooking on a raised stove at the far end of the boat. The night was unbearably hot and suffocating. Not even a leaf stirred. A heavy, oppressive silence hung everywhere. Staying inside the canopy was impossible. Sleeping on the wooden deck of the barge is comfortable on summer nights. But fear of tigers leaping from the dense forests lining the narrow canal made it unsafe. Inside the canopy, my uncle and Binod Babu were playing chess. All the small ventilation windows were open. I sat nearby, reading a book. Time passed. It was past 10 at night. The constables finished cooking. My uncle was deeply absorbed in thinking through a difficult move. I was reading a book named Akhyan Manjari in the dim light. Binod Babu, at having put his opponent in trouble, leaned back and gazed out through the opening at the ebbing tide outside. The long shadows of forest trees lay across the water. Then, something happened. From far within the dense forest ahead came a loud, clear, harsh peal of laughter. Though it sounded exactly like a human voice, it felt utterly inhuman, unnatural. Before we could even think, it came again. And then again. The sound was so sharp and piercing that it felt as if the trees were trembling, the earth shaking, the boat itself swaying. The constables abandoned their meal and rushed up. My uncle Binod Babu and I all stepped outside the canopy. The forest stood still, like a painted image. There was no wind, no movement even in the leaves. Ahead, the moon of the moonlit night was sinking behind the trees. Binod Babu asked,
"What is it, Rambabu? What is happening?"
The boatmen were badly frightened. They stood huddled beneath the mast, staring fixedly toward the forest. We were about to return inside when once more that laughter rang out. The sound was so cruel, so deeply disturbing, that goose flesh rose on all our bodies. One of the boatmen clutched his ears and cried,
"What is this? What is laughing out there? Hey, Allah! Allah! Save us! Save us, Allah! Allah, protect us! Protect us from this evil thing!"
My uncle and Binod Babu looked at each other inside the canopy. And my uncle asked,
"What do you think? Could it be a hyena?"
But from his face and the tone of his voice, it was clear he did not believe his own words. We discussed whether it might be possible to move the boat away, but the ebbing tide was so strong that pushing such a heavy barge upstream in the dead of night was impossible. And so we were forced to spend the night there. No one slept. Not a single person closed their eyes that night. In the last hours before dawn, we heard it once more. The forest was completely silent. The moon had set. River, sky, and forest were merged into darkness. My eyes were heavy with sleep when suddenly, from the deep, darkness-filled forest, that terrible laughter rolled out again. In that moonless, pre-dawn darkness, it sounded so inhuman, so demonic, that despite my young age, my blood seemed to freeze as I grasped its true nature. At morning tide, we left the barge, and by noon returned to the steam launch. After hearing everything, the chief serang and some of the crew said they too had heard that sound before. But since the place lay deep within the forest, people rarely went there. It was said that if one ventured far into that forest, remnants of ancient dwellings could be found. Rows of old, orderly bakul trees suggested that people had once lived there. Be that as it may, even today, so many years later, whenever I remember it, this is what comes to my mind. That what we heard that night was the savage, exultant laughter of some cursed, bodiless spirit roaming amid the ruins of an abandoned settlement in the depths of the forest. And whenever that laughter returns to my memory, even now, after all these years, my entire body still shudders.
And so, the story ends. Not with an answer, but with a memory. Because some horrors do not reveal themselves in form, they reveal themselves in sound. A laughter that does not belong to any living thing. The laughter is not a story of monsters. It is a story of silence, of places long abandoned and echoes that refuse to fade, of a sound heard once and never forgotten. Because some sounds do not stop when the night ends. They return whenever the mind grows quiet. You have been listening to Enigma Renderings, a place where forgotten stories are given new voice, where English is learned through atmosphere, tension, and pause, and where silence speaks louder than words. Until next time, dim the lights, still your thoughts, and listen carefully, because some sounds are not outside your room. They are already inside your memory. Good night from Enigma Renderings,
where stories whisper through shadows.